Robin,
Yeah.
we'll be asking you about how you started this amazing venture.
Thank you.
My first question from you is, being a CA, how did you come up with the idea of Tpot Cafe?
Okay. So, while I am a chartered accountant, and normally, a chartered accountant is always associated with tax related work, I started my career with merger and acquisition. So, even throughout my training, which is the mandatory articleship period, and post that, I was into merger and acquisition. I've worked with firms like Ernst& Young, where I got an opportunity to interact with a lot of young founders, entrepreneurs, some at early stages, some at a very late stages who have been doing their venture. So it attracted me a lot, that how people have a vision and then they live with that vision for 10-20 years. So I was always contemplating whether it will be right if I can also kind of do something of my own. And then finally a point came where I said that let me try it and see if that works for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is Tpot Cafe all about? It's just chai or chai nashta?
So Tpot is always about chai nashta.
Okay.
We all believe that India is a tea drinking nation, and perfectly a snacking nation too. In India, we always find opportunity to snack, and that's something that is inherent. We snack in the morning, prior to
Right.
lunch, after lunch, and tea is something that we can have 4 to 5 cups a day. So the idea of starting Tpot was always to capture the chai nashta market, and
Okay.
that's essentially what we'll always want Tpot to stand for.
Right. So how did you come up with all these varieties, and is there any special chai that your cafe is serving and no other cafe serves?
Yeah, so I think in a food and beverage space, you can only survive if you keep innovating. When
Right.
you start off, obviously you have certain products, and then you keep bringing new products to excite your customers, so that every time the customer walks into your store or orders it through an online or through phone, he gets something which he has not experienced before.
Right.
So keeping that trend, we have kind of tried to do that at Tpot also. So we, like, in the summers, we came up with an Indian summer product,
Okay.
which was basically a black tea with all the herbs in it, perfectly suited for the summer season because it had little bit of mint, so it could cool you during
Right.
summers. In iced teas, we have hibiscus iced tea, which is very popular among people, and there are about 4 to 5 such drinks which we have at our outlet, which you will not get at any other location or any other brand. So a lot of innovation is being done, and that will be, I'll say, one of the major strengths of Tpot even going forward.
Okay, so as you said that major innovations are coming up, right? So whose contribution is it like, and how did you come up with the team of your co-workers and your lower team members?
Right. See, I think it's always a team game because
Right.
even while there are founders, they essentially cannot do everything. It's
Correct.
not humanly possible to do everything.
Yeah.
So initially, when I was looking for part of my co-founding team, so there was a choice. The choice was that either I choose people who come from the industry, and whom but you know them only professionally, or there was an option that you go with your friends, and along the way you learn. So you are also learning and they are also learning.
Right.
So I went with the later option, which was having
Friends.
as part of the co-founders, because while you are looking to do something, trying to create something, it's a tough journey. So you need people who know you and who trust you even when things are not going well. So I have Asad, who is one of my friends, and a chartered accountant, and he takes care of operations, and Atit, who is an old buddy, and he takes care of marketing. So these are a couple of founders, and as we started growing, we have hired a lot of people, and these are people who come from industry with their own skill sets, people in marketing, people in business development, people in production, supply chain.
Something about your chef?
Yeah, so our chef is Himanshu. So Himanshu was with Maurya Sheraton, ITC Maurya Sheraton, for about 9 years.
Okay.
And he has joined us about 5-6 months back.
Okay.
So the idea of bringing him on board was to actually take our innovation to next level, to keep coming up with newer products, newer beverages that keep exciting customers. So almost every month we do something interesting. So like for Independence Day, we did an Independence Day sandwich, we did an Independence Day drink. Now we're looking to do something for Navratras. We'll do something gifting sets for Diwali. So every month we'll try and do something, some innovation.
That's nice.
Thank you.
So, how much of homework did you do before you launched the brand in the market?
So I think there are two things which I want to say here. So one is that one should do homework, but the other truth also is that all your homework goes for a toss.
Okay.
Yeah, so I also tried to do a lot of research and did a lot of analytics because I come from that field.
Right.
So numbers are something that anyways I'll say I'm fairly comfortable with. But whatever you plan will ultimately, it will not happen that way.
Right.
Something else happens, and that's why it's challenging, because you can plan whatever you want, but ultimately what happens is not there in your hand.
Exactly. So challenges, talking about challenges,
right.
What were the major challenges you faced in the first year?
See, one of the major challenges that we faced was, I believe it even today, that a lot of ventures that are there in F&B space or any consumer product space. When I'm not talking about online, I'm talking about consumer products.
Right.
One of the major challenges is that there is no ecosystem for that. You will easily get a lot of people who will come and join a tech startup, but there are very few people who are looking to bet on a non-tech startup, and that's a challenge in India. While India is a consumer story and there are numbers to back you, but still I think this sector is still dominant by people who have been doing it for last 40-50 years. There are not a lot of young people who are coming in and doing a lot of exciting stuff.
So how did you overcome this challenge?
So we did two things. One was to bring few people on board as mentors, maybe not formally but informally initially,
right.
Because you can go and bounce off your ideas. And second was to bring in people in your organization who come just because of your face value. So they trust you, so you try and talk to them and try and see if they can come and join you, because it's difficult to actually give a data on why they come. It's only because maybe they trust you, that's why they come and join your organization.
So it's basically the goodwill.
Yeah, it's purely your goodwill.
Right.
So I think these were the major challenges that we faced. Plus obviously there were operational challenges, that because it was a new venture, so everybody had their own suggestions. So if we wanted to do marketing and we approached people, so they would give their big bang ideas.
Right.
But more often than not, in a startup you don't have funds to do that kind of marketing. So then you have to pick and choose what you want to retain and what you know that it's practically not possible here.
So what about the funds? How did you begin? Your savings or the investors? Savings.
Yeah. So I'd worked for about 5 years, so I had saved my money. And I got some from my friends and family, and I think that's typically most of people start, because to get investors, and typically in case of R, which is a non-tech startup, before traction is very difficult in India.
So how sure were you that I am putting my savings in the right place?
I'll put it this way: if I had not been sure, I would have not put it, because you have to be, so as they say, the most difficult person to convince is yourself.
Right.
So if you can convince yourself, you can convince everybody else, because to leave a job, put everything that you have at stake is, I'll not say it's easy. There are obviously questions and there are obviously things that you question yourself, that is it the right thing. But once I was convinced and I made a decision, then I always backed myself. I said that whatever may happen, but I'll always give my best shot.
Okay. So, how do you plan to achieve your target of 50 outlets in the next 4 months, as you've said many times?
Yeah, I think the biggest USP that is with us today is that we have been able to build a very good team.
Right.
So we have hired good people and we have grouped them well. What I wanted each one of them was to have that same vision as we co-founders have for Tpot. Because initially as a startup, that vision is what is there. A lot of times things don't go well, but if everybody is working on the same platform with the same vision, more often than not solutions come. So I think team is something that is very critical for us and was for us, and today I think that is what will take us forward. We have tried to put everything in a scientific frame of mind. So we have a SOP, which is a standard operating procedure in place.
Okay.
for our operations, for opening up a new store, for finding out or selecting the right location. So we have practically tried to, scientifically solve each and every problem that we faced, so that we create a process for it, so that it's not dependent on a person. Anybody who can come and solve that or do it according to what has been specified can achieve the results.
Okay, so what is your strategy basically like?
See, the strategy is obviously to work with or go at locations where there are a lot of young people, because they are what our target is. We believe they are primarily at offices and at travel locations like metro stations, etc. So we will primarily be focusing on, I'll say, offices, colleges, and metro stations.
The most sought after locations.
Yes, typically yes.
So another thing I would like to ask, that you have 20 outlets till now,
Right.
and you are also planning to reach it till 50 by December. So who helps you in the decision for the locations?
Okay. So as the CEO of the company, I take care of business development, and business development includes choosing a new location and then rolling out the store. So, I have a couple of people who work with me in my business development team, and obviously we have our background, and I have also personally spent about 3 years now with the business, with the venture. So we understand the kind of locations. People know us, so there are some people who keep referring us locations, and then we have a scientific process where we evaluate each of these locations. So I'll say that issue is not getting a location. Issue is how do you identify which is the right location for you. That if you're getting 4 good locations, obviously you will not want to go at all of them.
Right.
You will want to pick and choose the locations where you think that it is going to work. So for that we have built up a scientific process where we have about 30 pointers where we based on which we evaluate. So the person from our BD team and I also personally go and evaluate each of the locations based on those 30 points, and then give a total score.
Would you like to share any out of the 30?
So things like what is the captive audience, how close it is to the existing metro station, is there any college nearby, what is how many number of cars pass through that location, things like these. So which give you a sense of what is the footfall that you can expect, what is the universe of people that you expect, and then based on it you can choose on whether you want to go at location or not go on that location.
Okay. So how will you maintain the same taste in all the outlets?
Again, standard operating procedure.
Okay.
So I think there are 3 important ingredients for maintaining the right quality. Is procurement, process, and people. We have a standardized procurement process and a centralized one. Because it's standardized and centralized, we can get consistent products throughout the year or throughout the period. So one is that. Second is people. So we try and groom and train them. So there's a rigorous training program, certification program for new joiners, and then every month they need to give certain tests. And third is process. So there's a standardized process for everything, how they make product, how they work at an outlet, how they communicate to the customers. So we have tried to kind of scientifically solve that problem.
So I think this is an amazing plan.
Right.
So with this plan, where do you see Tpot Cafe in 2 years?
I think 2 years from now we clearly want to have 250 to 300 outlets.
Okay, that's tremendous,
with
right?
About 4 to 5 cities in India, prominent cities in India, and that will be our target, to be a pan-India brand.
Okay, so since every month so many chai startups are coming out,
right?
So what do you think about that? How do you look at the chai market? Is this going to be like another e-commerce market?
I think if you look at any market in India, e-commerce is one of the ones, because it has been one of the most prominent.
Right.
You'll always see there are a lot of startups, and it primarily happens because of couple of reasons. One is the size of opportunity that is there in India, and second is that the way India is, it has never been a case where winner takes all kind of a situation, and you can take any industry and you will never see that there's, so like if you look at search, it's always Google, right? But if you talk about India, while in India Google is also prominent, but if you talk about Indian industries that are very specific to India or the problems that are being solved in India, you will see that there are more than one players doing that.
Right.
And that's what exactly happened with e-commerce. That has happened with, I think, with edtech, food tech, every space. So I think it's good from, if I talk from our perspective, because chai was, honestly speaking, losing because it was not exciting for a lot of people.
Right.
And because coffee was exciting, you have 5,000 outlets in India. So if per capita consumption of tea is 8 times that of coffee, so even if I go by that standards, we should have at least 50 to 60,000 tea stores in India.
Right.
So I think there's good amount of opportunity for at least 5 to 10 people or brands.
So you talked about coffee.
Right.
How do you see that? Like chai and coffee. Don't you think it's a competition? And what else do you think? Are people switching their taste from coffee to chai? Is that what you think?
See, I think at this moment of time, it is not fair to comment on that, because and I'll tell you the reason why. So till the time you do not have an option, you cannot actually choose. So if suppose you and I need to meet somewhere outside, invariably it will be a coffee brand, because that's what is there. So there is no alternate place, or there is no chai place where we can go and meet. So till now, I think people have not got an opportunity to go and sit and experiment at tea places.
Right.
Once I think you have equal number or possibly even half of that number of tea places, then exactly you will be able to see whether people like coffee more or they like tea more. In terms of consumption, we anyways know that in India tea is the prominent drink.
Yeah.
But outside home, tea has not got the I'll say the prominence, because it was not available at the right look.
As you said that tea is more prominent,
Right.
but still coffee has a dominant power. So
Absolutely.
do you think that will change in the coming time, that tea can dominate over coffee?
See, I think
in India?
tea has always dominated coffee, and that's very clear from the fact that you have the per capita consumption of tea is 8 times that of coffee.
Okay.
So 8x is quite a huge number.
Right.
So tea has always dominated, but unfortunately there were no options available outside home for people to consume. Plus our taste of tea or our understanding of tea was always limited to one variety of tea that we had at home. Because there were no brands, so that there was no awareness about different kind of teas. And slowly and steadily people are experimenting. There are startups who are doing good work in increasing that awareness among people. So I think tea was always, I'll say, a dominating factor and will continue to remain a dominating factor even in future.
Okay. So what uplifts a brand? The product value or the marketing strategy? Like if we talk about Tpot, what has uplifted your brand?
See, I think nothing can replace the product, because marketing can bring in people, but if your product is not good, then I don't think you can sustain it.
Right.
So from a long-term perspective, it is always product. But yes, in today's world, you need marketing. You need to create awareness. You need to create a buzz around the product. But on a long-term side, I'll always say it's product.
What's your success mantra?
I think my success mantra, and more so because of spending the time I have at Tpot, is keep doing things consistently. Things may happen late, but if you're doing the right things, they will certainly happen.
Okay. So since consistency you're talking about, right? So when you're talking about consistency, there are so many low points that strike you, and they try to stop you from work, and you lose all the hopes.
Right.
So I would like to know few of your personal or professional, any low point, and I would also like to know how you try to overcome that.
It was actually not a low point, but so as startups, obviously you go and you go to a lot of startup events and you go and meet people, because it's a very important part of the journey that you meet. So one of the most highlights was that everybody would talk only about tech startups.
Okay.
And that was, while I understand what technology is and the kind of impact that it can make, but I still believe that technology is only an enabler, because most of the ventures that we see around us are not, I'll say, technology oriented ventures. They're using technology to deliver a product or service. So that was something which was very baffling to me. And but then slowly and steadily one got used to it, that that's the way people are, and take it in own stride, and listen to what you want to listen, and whatever you think is not right, you possibly just take it in its own stride. That's all you can do.
Okay. So I would also like to know something about the co-founder of eValueServe,
Right.
Mr. Gupta, right?
Ashish Gupta.
Ashish Gupta. So how you are connected and how he has helped you, or he's a partner. Would like to know something about him.
See, Ashish, I think is an ideal investor that we would have wanted for Tpot.
Okay.
Very honestly speaking.
Right.
One more important is that the person who is coming on board should have a long-term vision. If he's betting on you, he should bet it for a long term. He should not be looking for some quick returns here and there, because then the way you look at your own business is, it changes. So that is one of the very important things. So Ashish, there was no personal, we did not knew each other personally. It was, we met at an event. He liked the idea of what we were doing. Then we met about 3-4 more times. He came, saw what we were doing, and that is when he decided to back us. So
Okay.
so I think the best part about him is he's here for a long term, and that's what we actually wanted in an investor. That's somebody who's looking to stick with us for a longer term.
Okay. So some news came upon about your seed funding.
Yeah.
I would like to know about that.
Yeah, so we raised our seed funding from Ashish. Initially, it was always bootstrapped, and we wanted to build something before we start and go and approach people. Once we felt comfortable at the idea that we, and also had confidence that we could execute it in a larger scale, we went and started speaking to people. Ashish was one of the persons that we spoke to. We really liked 2-3 things that I liked about him. Was one, that he himself was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So that was the first comforting factor, that as an entrepreneur he would have seen highs and lows, and that happens with every business. It will happen with Tpot. It has happened to all the businesses and ventures that have been founded earlier. So that really helped us. Second was, he was always looking for a long term, and he had little more, he could spend little more time with us. So that these are 3 things that I felt was very important.
Okay. So one very important question, not for yourself but for the younger generation.
Right.
Like, what message do you send to them so that once they know that they are entering the jungle of, I won't call it business, I would call it jungle of business, know what they are exactly doing.
Right.
Some message you want to send?
Yeah, I think very small message, that do it only if you want to do it.
Okay.
Don't do it because somebody else is doing it. Don't do it because your friends have been doing it. Don't do it because you feel that out of batch of 30 everybody is trying to become an entrepreneur.
Right.
Don't do it because of that, because it's not an easy journey, and it requires a lot of conviction. There will be ups, there will be lows, and if you're not convinced, and you yourself are not convinced about doing something, you will not be able to last longer. And then obviously there's bad blood, you kind of lose your confidence, which is not a good thing to have. So I'll say, do it if you're convinced. If you're not convinced, it's not necessary for everybody to become an entrepreneur.
So an entrepreneur, what is the one biggest quality that an entrepreneur need to have so that he can sustain in the business?
Never give up.
Never give up.
That's
And something about investments, like everybody, a newcomer always worries about investments. Where will I get the money from?
Right.
So how should they go about it? Like,
I think my suggestion will be that that one should have funding for at least a year when they are starting out.
Okay.
Not necessarily that you have entire money initially, but at least you know that who are certain people who will help you in case you need any help.
Right.
And these are people who know you personally. These will not be professional people. See, there are some people who have been lucky to get funding just on the idea stage, and some people who got funding, say a couple of months they started. But when you're starting up, that should come as an exception. You should not start by thinking that you will get a funding in 3 months. So my suggestion will be that have a year with you, because that also gives you an opportunity to know what all things that can be do, because everybody has an idea, and then they keep building smaller ideas around that idea, and then slowly and steadily it becomes a startup, and then it becomes a company.
Right.
Right. So I think that 1 year will give you enough time to understand your business also. So I think that will be my thing, and then obviously that don't give up. Things will not happen the way you want, but it will happen.